as that list populates. We will go ahead and get started today. Welcome to the Beacon. My name is Kevin Wilson, and I am your host today. Thanks for tuning in. This is Dominion Payroll's ongoing webinar series where we explore all sorts of insights and perspectives around the business community, economic conditions, legislative forecasts, all the stuff that you need to know and understand to run your business and serve your employees. We love doing these industry spotlights where we just sort of explore verticals that maybe you don't know too much about, but they have wide-ranging impacts on the world where we live, work, and play. So this is the story of folks' entrepreneurial journeys, and we're really excited to bring it to you every other Wednesday from Dominion Payroll. Before I introduce our panel, I'm really excited to dive into this topic, but I also want to do a couple housekeeping items. For folks, as you're listening to our conversation today, if you do have any questions, please drop those in the Q&A function. You'll see that there at the bottom of your screen. We use the Q&A rather than the chat because we record these so folks can come back and view them later. The chat disappears into the ether and the Q&A sticks around for us. So please use that and I'll incorporate those into our dialogue. For questions beyond the world of the travel industry, if maybe you're trying to navigate the ERC or PPP loans or FFCRA, there is a whole world of alphabet soup that we've grown to know and love over the last 12 months. You can always go to dominionpayroll.com and hit that COVID-19 resource button at the top of the homepage. That'll take you to a list of just a ton of resources to help you navigate these things and a schedule of webinars where we're tackling these topics in depth for you. Should one of these questions pop into your head at 3 a.m, you can't sleep, shoot a note over to questions@dominionpayroll.com and we will get an answer to you. Whether you're a client or not, we're here to serve our business community and help you out. So we're there for you. All right, enough about COVID-19 and the legislative side of all these things. Let's jump into today's exciting topic. I'm really excited to dive into this world of travel post-COVID. I think that I probably shared the attitude of a lot of people out there where, frankly, right now, I'd hop on a plane to just about anywhere if it meant that I could see an environment different than the four walls that I've been contained within for the last 12 months. It does seem that there is a bit of a surge on the horizon in terms of traveling for fun. And the amount of travel that is going to have widespread economic impact is going to be a really welcome change to our sort of COVID depressed economy. So without further ado, I've got two just great experts that I want to introduce for our conversation today. First up, joining me is Kim Goldstein. Kim is the president of Journeys Travel. Is a travel consultant specializing in honeymoons, destination weddings, and family vacations. Kim has a long list of accolades, including a top 25 top 25 award from the Travel Agent magazine, Wedding Wire Couples Choice Award from 2014 through 2020, and also listed as a top honeymoon planner. Kim, thanks so much for taking the time. It appears that you're joining us from some white sand beaches today.
I wish I was, but from rainy Richmond, Virginia. So
I hear you. Yeah, the view behind you is better than the window behind my shoulder.
Right.
Well, thanks for being here. Next up, I'm really pleased to introduce Scott Naurath. Scott is a principal and reservation and sales manager of Grand Cayman Villas and Condos. Grand Cayman Villas, they manage 75 properties on Grand Cayman Island, and they really specialize in bringing sort of a concierge white glove approach to people who are trying to connect with the right property in Grand Cayman, bring their families for a unique, almost once in a lifetime trip, and their ability to connect with the wider culture of the Caymans and local cuisine and all of that. Also to note, Scott is an avid scuba diver, which really gives a lens of expertise to folks that are trying to really have that Cayman experience. Scott, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
We do appreciate it. Well, folks, I always try to give a bit of a bio to sort of kick things off, but it's always best, hearing directly from you. Kim, I'd like to turn to you, and if you could just tell us a little bit about Journeys Travel and sort of the work that you do? What are the clients that you work with, and how long have you guys been in business?
We have been in business over 30 years. I started working in travel after a long career in banking about 15 years ago, and then bought the business about 3.5, 4 years ago now. So my focus is, I kind of say anywhere with a palm tree, but I also do a lot of Europe, and we really will book anything, anywhere, mainly international focused. We do a lot of Disney domestically, but other than that, we're pretty much all international. We have a team located throughout the East Coast, and just really, when we're working with clients, we have really good relationships with our travel suppliers and our hotels, and really ensure that our clients have a smooth vacation from start to finish. And when there is a problem, we can jump in and help because of our connections that we have, and just helps make the process a lot smoother for the clients, and they have someone to contact, especially now with all the different COVID travel protocol. They don't know where to start, so they're contacting us.
Awesome. Scott, tell us a little bit about Grand Cayman Villas and Condos.
We've been around since 2001. My business partner, Jim Levitt, started the business. We were both working for regional Wall Street firms here in Richmond. And he was smart enough to get out earlier than I did by about 10 years. We manage about 75 properties on Grand Cayman. We're vertically integrated on the island for our guest services operation. We have a charter boat for our guests to use. We have nighttime transportation. We offer scuba packages, all kinds of things like that. It's been a challenging year for us. We've refunded or canceled or rebooked over 1,200 reservations in the last 53 weeks, and
counting, right?
And counting. So luckily for us, there's a good sized population on Grand Cayman that are expats, and they can't leave the island. So they're in it worse. They had it worse than we did. Basically, they couldn't get off of a 22-mile wide island to go on any holiday. So we rented a lot of our properties out to locals. And then anyone who's returning to the island currently has to go through a short quarantine period. And we've rented a lot of places to returning residents and returning property owners, that kind of thing. But we see a light at the end of the tunnel coming probably late summer for us. And it's all going to be keyed around vaccinations.
Yeah.
Right now, the island is closed to tourists until the local population is 70% vaccinated. At that point, there will be no more quarantines, and the island will be open for people who have been vaccinated. The stick in the mud there, of course, is what do you do with children under age 16 who are not even eligible for vaccines? And
Sure.
we're awaiting guidance from the government on that. But currently, anyone arriving without a vaccination is subject to a mandatory quarantine period.
That's a really good place to just sort of dive in. The vaccinations, so much. I mean, whether we're talking about my ability to walk into the Costco without a mask on or travel to, points far and wide, it does seem to hinge on that vaccine. And I'm curious, I've heard a lot of talk about vaccine passports, or an app on your phone that indicates that. Kim, are you seeing any moves as far as the American government goes, or maybe local governments, to push that out so that folks are able to travel free and clear?
We're not really seeing too much. I've seen Belize come out and say that you do have, you can travel free and clear if you have a vaccine. I think it's coming. I just think they're probably waiting until more of the population can be vaccinated to determine, what the rules are and if that's a requirement that you're vaccinated. So just this past week, some of the cruise lines actually, well, a bunch of them had, but some of the major cruise lines actually announced that they are going to require vaccinations for the few ships that they're putting in the water this summer. So I think it's going to move in that direction. But testing is always an option. So it's like, can you test out?
Right.
and it's really interesting. And Scott, you probably experienced this in the Caribbean. Every island is its own government and they all have different rules, and which makes our jobs even that much more challenging because we have to keep up with all of them. But it's going to really vary depending on the destination. So we're seeing that the destinations that are pretty wide open right now are the ones that people are going to.
Sure, that makes sense.
I think you're exactly right with that. And an interesting thing to point out with that, because we figured early on that Grand Cayman would be one of the first islands to open up just because of the dependence on tourism. However, what we've come to learn is that Grand Cayman is only 25% dependent on tourism as part of its GDP. You'll look at some islands like Jamaica and Turks and Caicos and Barbados, where GDP is over 75% tourism. They're open. They don't have a choice. They can't afford to stay shut down like Grand Cayman could. So that's the catch-22, is how much safety do you want to guarantee for your local population at the risk of tourism dollars? And it's dependent on what percentage of your GDP comes from tourism. Grand Cayman has the luxury to wait a little bit longer than most countries, and it'll pay off in the end. It hurts in the near term.
Well, and I think that is sort of the story of so many economic journeys over the last 12 months, is that there is this short-term pain and this promise of sort of long-term gain, I suppose. Kim, you alluded to the fact that there are all these different restrictions, visa regulations, passport. International travel was a bit tough to navigate in the best of times. How has Journeys approached all the sort of changing landscape of regulation, both for the virus and testing, all of those things that go into just trying to take a family vacation, and how have your clients responded to that work?
Well, you really didn't have a choice. You had to learn it because, your business depended on it. So right away, we just started. It's just so much information coming in. We try to all keep up with the changes. We work in a network of different travel agencies throughout the US, and we all work together. I think that's been one big thing. And the travel industry always works together. We all have fun together. And I think that's really helped us kind of get through and share information. We're finding, that now more than ever, people are contacting travel advisors because they don't know how to take these trips. And there's so many requirements. As Scott was mentioning, the destinations like Jamaica, Turks and Caicos, they are open, but they do have testing requirements. I have a big group going to Jamaica next weekend for spring break, and they have to test within 72 hours of departing for Jamaica. And then when they return to the US, the CDC has required anyone traveling internationally has to return or take a test within 72 hours. So one of the things that we really worked hard on when the CDC came out with this rule was encouraging the resorts, that the big chains that we work with, to provide easy access to this testing when the clients are on property. So most of the big chains are offering complimentary on-site testing for all the guests staying there. So it's made it really simple, because when that rule rolled out, we're like, oh no, here it comes, another wave of cancellations. But we really didn't experience that because the resorts stepped up to the plate and created, these policies and just made it easy for our guests.
That's really fascinating. I hadn't considered that as sort of, this, you go to a Sandals and you're like, oh, I really want, room service on demand and also a COVID test on my way out the door.
Right. Right.
Really
All inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to turn to some of the travel that you may be seeing, and a question that's on my mind is, I feel like the world went outside this past year. We're sort of, we can't go to a concert, we can't go to a movie, and so whether it's hiking or just these long walks with the dog, I feel like people have sort of found this renewed love of life in the outdoors. And Scott, the Cayman Islands, they offer, some world class, beaches, scuba diving, amazing things like that. Do you think that folks, do you think there's going to be sort of a renewed appetite for this sort of adventure tourism from this past year? Or do you think people are just so eager to travel? I guess what I'm asking really is, are you seeing a renewed interest in new activities that maybe weren't there in 2019?
Well, first of all, the most important part of that, and Kim would agree with this, is the pent up demand is astronomical right now. And the number of phone calls that I get every day are increasing. And these are people who want to come down to the island next month. And I have to shatter their mirror there with current restrictions and regulations, and especially the children thing. But yeah, as far as activities go, Grand Cayman is always popular because there is plenty of hiking, there is plenty of sightseeing, and there is excellent snorkeling and scuba diving. People come to Grand Cayman for the culinary experience too. The local restaurants around the island are just phenomenal with regards to that. And then of course the beaches and the sun. So the pent up demand is important, more important to us than actually new activity type adventure type thing, because it's the same activities that were there before.
Right.
It's just mostly pent up demand coming out of the closet.
Interesting. Kim, I know that part of what Journeys focuses on is destination weddings. There was an industry that was, just overnight told to shut down, locally and abroad. And speaking of that pent up demand, is your phone ringing off the hook right now for folks to have that special day somewhere special?
I cannot book them fast enough. We have closed 30 some weddings just in 21 already, partially because getting married in this area is pretty much impossible, although they did increase the capacity size yesterday that's effective April 1st, which is great. So we do a lot of destination weddings and honeymoons, so it kind of hits us on both sides. But yeah, destination weddings are just crazy right now. We're finding difficulty getting space in summer of 22 in a lot of resorts already.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, I keep hearing, and I just sort of want to draw our audience's attention, these different interesting economic indicators. I was speaking with someone who owns a credit card processing company, and they did more in volume in the last couple of days than they did in the previous month. There's one, green light that's flashing, and you're telling me that booking an experience in summer of 2022 is starting to be difficult. There's another green light. Broadly speaking, and I just sort of toss this to both of you. We all know of the roaring 20s, in the past century. Do you think that we're poised for, a roaring 2020s, all this pent up demand and excitement to get out there and see the world again? Scott, I'd like to start with you. What's your economic forecast?
I think our forecast is excellent once the island is fully reopened. I think also that people view the Caribbean as one country. And they like to island hop.
Sure.
So we try to concentrate on repeat business, and that's about 10% of our booking volume. But I think you're absolutely right. The number of people who are going to want to travel is incredibly high right now. Also, interestingly enough, the average duration of stay is probably up about 15%. So where we normally average 5 to 6 nights of vacation, that's moving up to the 8 to 8 night range, and we've geared our marketing accordingly for that as well.
Fantastic. Kim, when you're looking out, are you are you ringing a bell? And maybe not prematurely, but are you excited as you look at the prospects of the coming year or two?
Yeah, it's I finally feel like I can look at my reports and feel good about them. For a while I was like, I just can't even look anymore because just one canceled or rebooked trip after the next. But yeah, it's definitely, people are tired of sitting in their house. They didn't spend a lot of money last year. Now, of course, a lot of people weren't in the same job situation. So that plays into it. But what we're really finding is people are wanting to create the memories, and you just, no one anticipated this would happen. And they really want to get out there. We're seeing a lot of multi-generational travel. So the whole family's meeting up in a destination, to get together. So yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a huge uptick in travel and money spent. Scott, good news for you. People are wanting villas and lots of space. They don't necessarily, they don't want to be on top of all their neighbors at a big, busy, crowded resort in some cases. So we're seeing a uptick in that as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. The way that, our desire to social distance this year may, have an impact where we say, you know what, let's take that trip, but let's put a little distance between us and the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting observation. So Scott, I know that you have a team that is there on Grand Cayman year round to help with your guests and all of that. And I mean, there's got to be some real difficulty in the best of times to sort of manage a staff from a distance. This year, I'm curious, has technology played a role in how you manage your business? And both internally and externally, as I'm sort of curious what lessons maybe you've learned over the last year and what you may take forward in an operating sense.
I could fill an encyclopedia with the lessons that we've learned over the last year. Technologically, we made a shift in our platform software about 6 to 8 months before COVID hit. So we were structured well going into COVID. Once you get a full shutdown like we had, and I'm talking about 100% shutdown, turn the spigot off, technology just didn't come in to factor at all for us necessarily. Opening back up, we have our technology where we interact with other travel agents directly, wholesale travel agents directly. We market through Airbnb and VRBO, and the changes that we made just prior to COVID are bearing some fruit coming from that. So technologically, yes, we're in a better position than we were 6 to 8 months prior to COVID, but we were setting up for a phenomenal 2020 before the baseball bat hit us in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And I think 2021, the rest of the year, kind of going to be a wash. Maybe it'll pick up, but it's not going to make up for the first half loss. 2022 is where we're looking for now for our big pickups, I think.
Yeah. Kim, sort of same question to you. I know a lot goes into booking an initial trip. And as you were saying a little bit before the show, there's 10 more steps involved in rebooking and all of that. Do you feel like you're going to come out of this experience better able to serve, your clients and sort of that white glove approach and ability to sort of turn on a dime? What has that experience been like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the travel industry is interesting. There's always some drama going on, whether it's a hurricane or, we actually would always joke there's a disease of the year, Zika. I mean, there's always something. So we've learned really to adapt, but obviously COVID took it to a whole new level. No one ever anticipated that travel would just shut down for months. And we didn't have a lot of time. Unfortunately, clients are calling you the minute the news broke and we need to do this, we need to do that. So we didn't have a lot of time to adjust and we didn't have a lot of downtime. But it's changed the way, we really kind of almost went away from technology and really we're trying to pick up the phone, call our clients when we could and say, let me walk you through this. Let me explain, how this is going to look as best as we know right now. And that was always hard. Everyone how do you think it's going to be in September when we travel? Right. If I had that crystal ball, I would not be sitting here working. I would be on the beach in Grand Cayman, that's for sure. So, that was kind of our thing. We always had to be in the moment. As of today, this is what the policy is, and this is what we can do. So we really kind of went backwards and tried to pick up the phone and communicate a little away from technology when everything kind of fell apart at first.
Sure. I've been sort of endlessly amused looking at social media posts and things from back when we thought this might have lasted 3 or 4 weeks. And now we're celebrating, my wife has had 2 COVID birthdays now. So this has been an unbelievable experience. I wanted to stick with what you just said in terms of almost going to that older approach to connecting with your clients and picking up the phone, being in person. You both represent sort of concierge, travel agencies, and I'm curious. This has less to do with the pandemic, but just sort of the zeitgeist of the Expedias coming along, and the being able to book an event with a couple clicks of the mouse. In what ways have you adjusted to this age of the internet, where everything is sort of on demand? And I hear from doctors all the time that if they could shut down one website, it'd be WebMD, because everybody comes in thinking that they're a gastroenterologist because they read an article. Do you find that you have to sort of combat some of that in terms of being the expert, telling people this is how you get there in a way, this is how you have the best experience, and you can't do that just with a cursory Wikipedia page, right? Scott, tell us a little bit about your experience in terms of that white glove approach versus people coming in and sort of saying, and I've done my research, I know what I want.
We get both sides of the coin. We get people, it never ceases to amaze me, about a quarter of our bookings come from people who never ask a question.
Really?
And I just think to myself, how do you go to a foreign country, island, and not have any questions before you book? But the vast majority of people reach out. They have a lot of questions. I mean, we drive on the left side of the road down there, and the steering wheel's still on the right. I mean, there's some crazy stuff. Good news is the island's flat as a pancake, so we don't have those twisty turny roads like the U.S. Virgin Islands do, or anything like that. But yeah, there's a lot of hand holding. They want to know what they're going to be doing, where they're going to be eating. Do they need a rental car? And we've always had that hands-on approach, and that's has separated us from our competition. Jim started this business with 1 property in 2001. Wow. And I joined when we were at about 30 properties, and our chief competitor on the island at one point in time had over 100 properties under management, and they're down to 26. Wow. So, it's been because of our hand-on approach. We built a welcome center in the middle of the island. We hired 3 full-time employees to help. They've forgotten more about the island than I'll ever know. And there are a wealth and an abundance of information. And information is the key for us. I'm interested in hearing from Kim on this, because as much as I know about Grand Cayman, I can't imagine having to know that about 25 different destinations, because each one is so different and so unique. It's just amazing what she does. It makes my job look very simple.
Scott teed that up perfectly. I'm going to toss to you, Kim.
Okay, yeah, it's I feel like my head's swirling all day, every day. I have like 8,000 browsers open in my head, but yeah, it can be information overload. I do travel a lot. I've traveled a lot internationally since COVID. So that helps us retain and experience. And I think for us, like asking about internet and things like that, when a client, I won't provide a quote until I have a consultation with a client. And once they start talking to us, they know there's a difference between clicking a few buttons on an online travel agency like Expedia or Costco and actually working with a human. People have questions, and most of them do. And Scott, yes, we have those clients where I'm like, who are you? We haven't even heard from you almost the entire time. How do you not have questions? But we do send a lot of informational emails that inform them about their trip and tell them things they need to know. But it's a lot to keep up with. And I think people do rely on someone that knows what they're talking about. So when you can get them on the phone and we start talking, they definitely see the value in that, and usually, do book with us, which is nice. And it's, we keep on top of things as best as we can. The changes this year have been incredible. And it's like, I don't try to commit anything to memory. Someone asks me a question, I know where to go and look it up, because it could have changed 5 minutes ago and I might not have seen that email yet. So it is a lot to keep up with, but that's the most important part right now. There are a lot of things to check off to get a client out the door. And unless they are an expert and they're fully versed in that location, they should not attempt it on their own, because they could be denied boarding and won't even leave their home airport very easily. And it happens every day.
Yeah, trust the experts on that one.
Right.
I can't imagine being, within striking distance of, sort of a once in a lifetime trip and getting pulled off at Richmond International Airport.
Yeah, and the worst part is you don't get your money back. It's not the resort's fault that you didn't have the proper documentation and take the necessary steps. So you lose out on that. And it's, not a conversation I ever want to have with a client, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I know this is a little bit outside of both of your purview, but since we're talking about travel, I just sort of wanted to get your take on, business travel comprises a huge amount of what airlines do. And, I hear a lot of people saying, I'm not gonna fly a sales guy from New York to LA when I've seen for a year that he can hop on a Zoom call and close a deal. And I'm just sort of curious, and feel free to tell me to buzz off if this is too far outside of your area of focus. But as far as business travel goes, do you think that we're going to see a return to pre-pandemic numbers, or do you think that space may be disrupted for the next handful of years? Scott, what's your take on that?
Well, the good news for us is I gotta believe that business travel coming down to Grand Cayman for a convention, that kind of thing, is probably less than 5% of my business. So I don't think that affects me as much as it might others. But I got to believe that there's going to be less business travel. I could see myself, who normally goes down to Grand Cayman once a month for 5 to 6 nights. I can see that backing off to, okay, I'm going to go every other month now, because I can get done a lot of the things I need to get done through Zoom calls and through internet contacts. And I've never been on a Zoom call before COVID hit. I've been on 50 Zoom calls in the last 3 months, it seems like. So I think that things like that are business travel is going to be cut back extraordinarily. I don't think it'll affect the vacation market as much.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I had never hosted an internet TV show before all of this happened, and here we are. Kim, what's your take on the state of sort of business travel moving forward?
I would agree with Scott, and we do very little corporate travel. So from a business perspective for us, it's not a huge impact. But I would agree. I mean, I think it's definitely going to be impacted, and I think it won't recover as quickly, and I don't know that it will recover to the full level that it was before, because everyone has adapted to working at home. And right now, for example, my husband, he typically travels to Europe pre-COVID would travel to Europe, and now you can't even go. So for over a year, he hasn't been able to travel, and he would go sometimes monthly to Europe.
Yeah.
So we're cut off right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a colleague point out that following the tragic events of 9/11, a lot of the sort of talking heads said, "Hey, we'll never get on an airplane again," or "This has been permanently disrupted." And lo and behold, we were getting on airplanes, quicker than everybody who needed to have a hot take. And so I'm just sort of putting a pin in this, and I'm curious to watch the impact on travel as we realize that that human connection from a business standpoint can be real valuable, and Zoom fatigue is real. So I don't know. I'm curious. So to our audience, tune back in 6 months, and we'll have an update on business travel. All right. So I want to ask just sort of a fun question here. Scott, where was the first place you ever went internationally? And if you could get on a plane right now, anywhere in the world, where are you touching down?
I've always been a Caribbean fan. I've traveled through at least 10 or 12 different Caribbean islands. I've done Hawaii, I've done Europe. My father is European. So I spent a lot of my childhood doing that and didn't want to do that as an adult or as a young adult. Anyway, as a young adult, I think the Caribbean was my destination of choice just because from the East Coast, it's so easy to get there.
Yeah.
I can get to Grand Cayman. I can leave at 9 o'clock local time, which is civil, and I can be on the island on Grand Cayman by 1:30 in the afternoon. That's pretty good. 4.5, 5 hour commute is pretty good for us. So, although I've been to Hawaii before, that's a haul to get out there. But I really enjoy going to the Cayman Islands. I really enjoy going to the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I get my fill there. I prefer to go to the safer islands. I'm not a big risk taker with high unemployment, high crime, high drug use, that kind of thing. But so I kind of stick with Cayman and I stick with the U.S. Virgin Islands. I've seen enough of the rest of them.
Yeah, fair enough. Kim, where did you travel abroad for the first time?
I know, I was thinking back. I think Jamaica was my first trip abroad. So yeah, and I'm a Caribbean girl too. So anywhere with blue water usually makes me happy. But
Right.
I think right now, if I could hop on a plane to Tahiti before 4 o'clock today, I would be the first one in line doing it. So that would be on my list. And like I said, I have traveled a lot since COVID, so it feels very normal to me now. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not panicking. It's actually, honestly, air travel is so much better since COVID than it was before. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of enjoying it. I'm like, oh, I like having that empty seat next to me on Delta. That makes me really happy. So.
For sure. But let me ask you, when you look across your clientele, are there any hot destinations that are starting to creep up? Is it similar to pre-pandemic, or is there a white sand beach somewhere that's the hot spot?
I think right now, because of what's open and I say easy, that doesn't mean you don't have to be tested, because at this point, most people traveling are getting tested. Well, you have to get tested to come back for sure. But my whole thing is, I'd rather test before I go, know that I'm healthy getting on the plane. And then, when you get there, you're fine. But I feel like now, because of the restrictions and requirements, that we're really seeing a huge uptick in Mexico. Mexico has always been one of our top sellers for sure, but now everyone's going to Mexico. And it's so funny, a few years ago, people were scared because they heard this and that. And they, just, it's really become a hot place, and people are like, oh wow, those things we heard weren't really necessarily true. So they're really enjoying it. Definitely seeing Caribbean as the islands start to open. We'll see more and more there. We're getting a decent amount of Jamaica, Turks and Caicos, Dominican Republic as well. But right now, you're really kind of limited to Mexico, Caribbean, Hawaii. You can't do Europe, and so we're kind of cut off from a lot of places, Australia, things like that. So
Yeah, it's an interesting landscape right now. I'm eager to see it begin to thaw. Last sort of technical question. I feel like so much of the messaging that we've heard is that we're all in this together, right? And it's this idea of we put on a mask and we social distance, that we can all contribute to diminishing the impact of the pandemic. At the same time, there are competing interests, both from public safety and the government, also local government regulations, private enterprise, and then just individuals wanting to have some semblance of a normal life. So Scott, I'm curious, as far as your relationship with the government of Grand Cayman, and just sort of your look at sort of the legal landscape, like how has the partnership been between private and public, and just sort of the regulatory environment? Has it been frustrating? Has it been efficient? You know, as I'm curious how that interplay has impacted your ability to do your job.
Well, we've been frustrated, to say the least, with the local Caymanian government. There's a general election there, the middle of April. There'll be a new administration, and the current administration is not eligible for another term. So we've had our back and forth with the government there. Our primary objectives and our relationships deal with the customer and the owner and ourselves, because we're the intermediary between the customer and the owners. And when COVID hit, we had no experience with this. Nobody did. And we immediately went out to our owners and we said, we have to update our cancellation terms to cover these people. If they can't get to the island, you got to give them their money back. And of the 75 properties that we had, 74 owners agreed with us completely. The 75th one is no longer a customer of ours. And we told them, if you don't agree, that's fine, you're on your own, but the guests are going to challenge their credit card charges if they cannot get to the island. And they said, we'll deal with that when it comes. And I don't even know what happened. It was a relatively new house for us anyway. We only had about 6 forward bookings, but I don't even know how those 6 were resolved. I'm sure the customers got their money back. So our primary objective and concern is our relationship with our owners and our relationship with our guests and keeping everybody happy. And by updating our cancellation terms to fully cover people for COVID, this was back of March 17th last year. You know, we've developed a lot of goodwill with our customers, and we'll get a lot of repeat business, especially from people who've had to cancel their reservations in the last year. They'll come back.
Yeah.
So that's where we've put our efforts. We can't control what the government of Grand Cayman does. All we can do is respond to the rules and regulations that we're given. But what we can control is our relationships with our customers and our owners, and that's gone very well for us.
Absolutely. Kim, as you sort of look across, I mean, a huge regulatory environment when you start to take into multiple countries and all of that. How you know, it's a lot of information, first off, just to synthesize and to be that expert. But you know, how has your relationship been to the government? Has there been a place where you're like, man, they really, you know, fumbled on this, or oh man, they really, you know, under promised and over delivered? You know, I'm sort of curious, you know, what's working and what's not.
So we don't work really at all with like the local government on these things. It's all, of course, handled at the national level, so kind of well above us. But there is an organization, ASTA, that we are part of that kind of oversees and lobbies for the travel industry. And every day there's some sort of update on what they're kind of lobbying for. And, you know, a lot of it gets into the testing requirements, the vaccination requirements, things like that. And it is kind of far removed. Like Scott, we're the intermediaries. So it's a little far removed, but obviously those decisions have a huge impact on our business. So we always have an eye on them and, you know, are monitoring and trying to do what we can to advocate and, you know, have the right decisions made for us. But it is kind of handled at a level far above us that we don't really have too much control over.
Yeah, and I can imagine that some of the frustration would just be in that reactionary stance of, okay, this has changed, and all right, let's get it out to the client. Let's try and understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing we've learned, not even just with COVID, even with a hurricane or anything that's coming out, is we don't want to panic right away. We will send an email out to our clients and we'll say, you know, hey, we're aware of this. It could potentially impact your vacation. Give us a couple of days to understand the facts and we will get back to you. And we found that approach to really work well, because if you jump and start, you know, contacting everybody, you don't really know what's going on any more than, you know, they do, because we're just watching it all unfold and trying to get a better idea. So,
well, you know, and that really jives well with sort of a red thread that I've come across through a lot of these conversations, is that, you know, in times of uncertainty and volatility, you know, over communicate, keep a calm head, And that'll see you through to the other side 9 times out of 10.
Mhm.
All right, guys. Well, you know what? First off, I want to say I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think that, it's fascinating to see the world on the cusp of beginning to reopen, and the ability to dip my toes in some blue water is certainly on the top of my priority list. Scott, I want to give you an opportunity. Tell our audience, if they're getting that second shot in their arm and they're looking to the future, how can they connect with Grand Cayman Villas? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you guys and book a trip?
Our website is grandcaymanvillas.net. We're headquartered here in Scott's Addition. Our phone numbers are on the website. You can ask us questions anytime, but I got just three things that I recommend for people going forward. One is to plan your vacations early. 2 is to get vaccinated, because international travel, at least for the short term, is going to be predicated on vaccinations. And I think this is going to be a long-term thing. I think this is here to stay. And then the third part is you really want to understand your cancellation policies wherever you book. Those are the 3 important things. Plan early, get a vaccine, and know what's at the end if something comes up. We'd love to help you. Love to hear from anyone, and let's get some feet in the water here soon.
Absolutely. Really good calls to action there. Kim, how can folks connect with Journeys Travel?
Sure. We have a website too, of course. It's journeystravelinc.com, and we have there's a request a quote right at the top, and you can fill that out and we'll contact you and set up some time to chat. And I would agree with Scott on his 3 points for sure. I mean, those are the most important thing. And I'd like to add one to it too with travel insurance. When COVID first happened, as Scott said, they were really trying to get clients refunded, and that's all we did was work with hotels and airlines and doing the best we could to get clients money back. But now when people are booking, COVID exists and you need to protect yourself, and travel insurance is the short answer. Hotels and airlines are not refunding money, just because you get kind of cold feet and don't want to travel. So travel insurance is the way to go.
All right. Well, guys, thanks so much for sharing your insight and expertise. I've got a glass of water here. I hope that the next time we're doing this face to face and there's an umbrella sticking out of my glass and we're enjoying the sounds of the Caribbean. Really do appreciate you taking an hour out of your day and giving us just a lot of really good insights on the state of travel today and what we can expect moving forward. Scott, good to see you, sir. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you. I hope to see you upstairs in a couple of weeks. And Kim, thanks for all your input. And Isabel, thanks for putting this together. It was a great time.
Yeah.
Kim, thank you very much for being here today. Really enjoyed getting to know you and enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am your host, Kevin Wilson, and this has been The Beacon. Remember, you can always go to dominionpayroll.com and hit that COVID-19 resource button at the top of the page. There you can see our upcoming webinar schedule and have access to all sorts of good resources to help you navigate these difficult times. I'm signing off now. I hope everybody has a great Wednesday. And here is to future adventures and travels near and far. Everybody have a great day.